very much, Kadem. It was a pleasure to be invited to do this. It's not an area that I normally will talk on. I've done many technical speeches, so I found I had to actually go off and do some serious thinking. So I thought I might start off by giving a little bit of a background about me, because it also gives you a hint to some of the things that I've learned and why. I'm a mission-driven person, and my mission has been to be a leader in a movement to create a world where humans live in harmony with nature. And that's been a key driver for me since my mid-20s. And in the last 10 years, I guess I became clearer that my role in life is to be a change agent towards that transition. I started my career in large business. I did a chemical engineering degree and then started with a large business. But I didn't much like business politics, and I didn't like the idea of having to compromise on what I thought was the right thing to do, which I found was asked of me. And so as my mission became clearer, I switched over to government energy policy. And then I led for the New South Wales State Government, the Energy Management Advisory Service. And I really fell in love with the whole field of energy efficiency. But I found myself in government as a round peg in a very square hole. So I left at the age of about 26 to start my own energy efficiency business, Energetics. And I built a consulting business there, which still exists. And I was horrified to figure out that it's 37 years ago since I started that business, and it's still thriving. And it started off being in consulting, which it still is, but then we built an IT tech business, and I got very interested in e-commerce and how that would apply to energy and sustainability. So we built the first online platform in the world for sustainability metrics in '98, and then I took it to the States in the early 2000s. I was in the United States from 2001 to 2004, 5. In total, I led Energetics and then its US subsidiary for about 25 years. Did some other things in innovation for Energetics, and then decided to leave and head up a not-for-profit, A2SE it was at the time, the Australian Alliance to Save Energy. It became A2EP. And I helped establish it, and then ended up becoming the chair and then the CEO. After some years doing that, I got frustrated with our scale of impact. So I decided to work with the people at UTS to apply for a cooperative research centre bid. And I led the bid team that went on for 2 years, believe it or not, nearly killed me. And then I became the inaugural CEO of the CRC Race for 2030, which stands for Reliable, Affordable, Clean Energy by 2030. So we won that CRC grant, and from July we were funded for a 10-year period, and I'm looking forward to have an ongoing role heading up that organisation. And I had the pleasure of being able to, unlike what normally happens with business, but it happened to me several times, I actually got to choose all my own people, and it's actually the third time I've been able to do that in my career, which is pretty unique. Which has meant that we've got a very motivated and like-minded group of people, which is fantastic. So Race for 2030 is the Cooperative Research Centre for the Energy and Carbon Transition. So we've got a fantastically important and relevant role in decarbonisation of the Australian economy. We've got in total about $350 million of resources to invest over 10 years. And we're currently transforming from our startup phase and getting into full operation of the research program. And the next 6 months, that startup phase will largely be complete. We're now getting up to 20 full-time equivalent people, and we're going to be looking for our last couple of people in the next 2 to 3 months. So if you're interested in this area, keep an eye out because you might be interested in our role in market transformation or some of the other things in capacity building. So I guess in summary, I've always been a leader, so that's my natural instinct, but I haven't thought about what leadership is very much. I've just sort of done it. more so I've been thinking about it in the last 2 or 3 years. So I did have to go off and think, what is the role of a leader? And so I'm going to try and take you through my feeling of what the importance of leadership is, what the role is, and ultimately get through to the role of strategy. So I think the key thing for a leader is to have a vision and hold up that vision, and then to build and then continually rally the team to understand the vision, seek it with passion, and to achieve it. So the vision is a light on the hill. It's the "I have a dream," the Martin Luther King moment. It's what you dream about achieving. And then I think the next thing is for the organisation that you're working in, turn that vision into a mission, which is clearly understood by the organisation. So what's the purpose for being as an organisation? Why are you doing it? And what are your key values? I usually don't have in a mission statement the values. I usually separate that out, but I think it's important to give a sense of what you are and how you're doing it, as well as where you're going. So an example of a mission statement: the Blues Brothers I saw recently again. Great fun movie, and they said they were on a mission from God. They had to raise $5,000 for their convent, and the byline was by legal means. I think they achieved raising the $5,000, but I'm not sure they achieved their mission, because they did promise that they were going to do it by legal means. I'm not sure that they entirely did that. But anyhow, that's an example of a mission statement. And for a business, a mission statement's critical because it provides a guide to whether you would be interested to work with the business or for the business, and clarifies what you're trying to achieve. And I think personally, having a mission in life is also something very critical to a happy and fulfilled life. I think having something greater than your immediate interests, personal interest, is crucial. I think it provides you with purpose, and without that, lives, I think, are much smaller and tend to focus on the mundane. But I think I found in my career that, as importantly as that, having a mission and that you're committed to, it links you in a very fundamental way with all others that have a worthy mission, and that provides, I think, an immediate bond to like-minded people, which I think is wonderful, because it's like being part of a great club of people who care, which I find both reassuring and inspiring. So I talked about values, and I would have said when I started my career that this was sort of a wishy-washy, woolly thing, but I really have come to, over the last 20 years particularly, to really formalise my belief in having a set of common values that you work to. The race has formalised its values through a workshop. We had a facilitator, and we had a day working together as a team to define our common values. And those are listen to the people's voice, speak from the heart, translate passion into action, build together, and seek impact through innovation. And I think we regularly, when we meet, we talk about how people are exhibiting those values. And occasionally I'll have a personal chat with people who I don't think are exhibiting those values. And sometimes people come to me and say, I don't think you've exhibited those values. And the outcome of that is always me going off and seriously thinking about it, and then usually a heartfelt apology in front of the team. So I think values are crucial. There was another champion basketball team where they had 7 values on the wall, which they all had to touch with their hand when they went out into the court. And they were humility, unity, integrity, passion, discipline, gratitude, and service. So I think I like those too. And I learned at my great expense, partway through my career, the importance of values. So we took on venture capital to build our energy management system, which we took to the United States, the online platform. And I thought, well, as long as they've got money, that's great, and we can take on venture capital. And they took on a majority ownership in the end, and that would allow us to build the business, expand into the US, and I thought this was going to be wonderful. But of course, what I found out is we had very, very different value set. The board continued complained that I was taking too long to get to the ultimate outcome, that I was too much focused on customers and I was too altruistic. And I must say that that period was the most miserable and alienated 5 years of my business career. So I learned a hard lesson. And these days, one of the key things, I've always done this, but it became even more hardened for me, is that I only bring people into our team that have got common values and a common value set, that are committed to our mission and passionate about what we do. And as far as I can, I aim to do business only with people that have common values. And I always try to live by those values. I don't always succeed, but I think it's important to have those values and try and live by them if you're a leader. So I then made a list of other things which I thought were pretty good leadership characteristics. And I think a lot of leadership has got to do with emotional intelligence. And I'll explain later that that's something that I took a long time for me to develop. I thought IQ was the be-all and end-all and effort, but found out over time that self-knowledge is pretty critical. And so I think a leader needs to have good self-knowledge and a constant striving for balance in their life. I think leaders need to have a healthy ego, but that ego can't run the show, and it certainly can't be narcissistic, which is destructive. I think it's important that you're confident that you're good at what you do, but use that base to focus on how you can help the team members to shine. And you've got to be willing to admit mistakes and make it very clear that you're also learning along with everybody else. I think you have to be courageous. I think you have to deal with problems front on and not avoid making hard decisions. And that, again, takes time. Particularly, I found it difficult to deal with individual personality issues straight on. I was perfectly happy to deal with business issues straight on, but I found it much more difficult because I hadn't built a lot of EQ at that stage. So that's something I had to learn. I think respect is very important. I think you should respect the people that you deal with, everybody, and also respect the people that you work with in terms of your customers and your stakeholders, and make it clear that you respect them, even if they're different than you, to see the value in everyone that you deal with. Trust, I think, is probably core. I think that everyone needs to see that the leader says what they mean, do what you say, treat everyone fairly, and if there's a challenge, you always look after your team members before yourself. And sometimes it's hard to live that, but I think it's important to do that, because that trust is the glue that makes people confident that they can talk to you honestly and openly. And it also means that when you're dealing with customers and stakeholders, that they know that your word is your bond. Kedem mentioned mentorship. I think mentorship is very important, and the willingness to invest your time to build the next generation of leaders. I brought to my team a word which I heard in a meditation thing I was doing, which is Otsuka Asema, which the Japanese use daily, which is a word to say that you appreciate the work and contributions of all your team members. I think taking personal accountability and responsibility is important. I think people should know that when it comes to you, the buck ends with you, and there's no such thing in the organisation as blaming, and that politics doesn't have a place in the organisation. I think self-discipline is important, and keeping an unerring focus on the end outcome. And the last one I'll put in is something which I think never gets talked about, or rarely, where relating to leadership. I think love, care, and empathy are important. I think people often fear emotion in business and don't talk about it. And I think that's a big mistake, because we're working with people. They have their own personal needs. And if we don't recognise them, acknowledge them, and understand what what people what drives people, and what people fear or gives them anxiety. I think it's very important to have recognition of that and to talk about those things openly. And I could never do that in the first 30 years of my career. I just would shy away from having those difficult personal conversations about feelings. It wasn't something that was part of my bloke skill set, but that's changed over time. So I can't say I always live by all those principles, but I certainly do try, and I take it for heart if people think that I have failed to do that. I think good leaders also work with their team and their board to build a strategy, to develop the mission and vision, and to rally the troops to deliver it and to adjust it where it's going off track. So strategy is the thing that I was actually asked to talk to, but I couldn't see how I could get there without putting it in the context of what a leader does. So once you've got trust and a common vision and common values, it's much easier to build a strategy with your team that is going to be effective to deliver that mission and the vision. A strategy is, I think, when I read books about strategy, I found it always very confusing. I couldn't tell what's the difference between a strategy and a plan, and strategy seemed like a very self-important word, and I think it is, because I think, strategy to me is just the plan of how you get to your core goals. So if you've got clarity of your destination, and you can try and build a little mud map to have alternative paths to get there, by starting with the end outcome and working backwards, and then keep refining the model as you get further information, then you can develop a plan to get there with your team that everyone accepts and agrees to help deliver. And that plan should be as simple as possible. Everyone needs to understand it and where they fit into that plan, and then to develop performance metrics for each part of the organisation and each person with their teams. And ideally, those metrics will align with the end objectives, and you continually test them to ensure that they're aligned and they're achievable. I do like stretch goals. Anyone of my team that's on this call will laugh at that, because they think I only believe in stretch goals, but I don't mind if people underachieve a stretch goal where they've delivered all of the key performance metrics but may not have met the full stretch. But I like the idea of having big, hairy, audacious goals, which because they open your imagination to different solution sets. If you're continually looking to incrementally improve, I don't think you actually come up with the optimal solution to how you get from A to B. The big thing about stretch goals is that you work with your team to deliver them, and the stretch goals are promised, not a threat. I think that all deliverables must be something you work together on, and yes, they're a measure of how you perform, but there's no threat attached with that. We're all working together to achieve that end objective. And in the end, I own all of the core objectives, the key deliverables that are signed off by the board. I own them, so I expect to take full accountability for delivering on those. So I thought I'd just tell you the race vision, mission, and objectives, and how we deliver those. We've got a very challenging business. It's got very large stretch goals, and a CRC is an extraordinarily complex organisation. So I keep telling my team, yes, we're doing something difficult, and yes, I understand that it's a stretch, but it is a very complex organisation that the Commonwealth has asked us to build and live with, and then deliver solutions through. It has currently 65 partners, and will ultimately have probably 90. And if you can imagine the stretch of being able to, or the challenge of being able to work towards a vision and some very hard deliverables with 90 partners who have got some common objectives with you, but also a lot of their own individual separate missions and objectives, and try to bring those together and enthusiastically go along with with the management team and the board, and drive innovation which delivers outcomes. You can imagine this is not a simple process, and we've gone through, as I said, a quite difficult and complex startup process, but I think we've done that extremely well, and I think it's because we've got a very cohesive team. So the vision is to develop, or is to achieve, or our vision, I wouldn't say to achieve. Our vision, my light on the hill, and it's the light on the hill of the organisation, the board, is to see a flourishing low carbon Australia in 2030, where energy research improves the quality of life and boosts energy productivity. So we have a vision of a flourishing low carbon Australia in 2030, and our mission is to drive innovation for a secure, affordable, clean energy future by 2030. So we've got objectives that we are committed to delivering under that. One of them is to, and by the way, again, RACE means reliable, affordable, clean energy. So our objectives are around that. We have committed to cutting energy costs by 3.9 million cumulative by 2030. That's a big number. And it turns out that we would actually have to leverage the outcomes of individual projects by about 20 times to make that target. I see that we're running short of time. Kadim's come on to give me a wave. I've only got about 5 minutes to go. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'll shorten down the RACE objectives. Anyhow, our other objectives are around carbon emission reductions, and improving system reliability, but we also have deliverables around building a successful energy technology and services business and creating jobs. So under that mission and objectives, we cascade down to a set of annual objectives and then key deliverables, which are signed off by the board, and I own those. And to deliver those, we've agreed on a set of individual KPIs and performance right throughout the organisation. So we've got large targets, we've got a sense of urgency, and we've got a strategy built around market transformation versus incremental change. So we're talking about transforming markets rather than incrementally improving. It's the only way we can reach our targets. And that market transformation means that we need to do a lot of connected up projects which deliver system solutions, and they amplify those through by taking our research to market through partnering with others. So we have to be great at building a large ecosystem and collaboration. It's one of our core values, and it's one of the core parts of our success is collaborating. So I might finish off quickly by saying that the role of leadership and personal development is very critical in this time, because we've had a period of rapid transformation, but not only in the carbon and energy space, but in most aspects of life. I think leadership is critical to guide organisations and people through rapid change without fear, and to provide a strong, positive sense of how opportunity comes in these periods of rapid change. And I think if you do that, you can be resilient and not only face rapid change without fear, but also welcome change as an ally to provide opportunities to deliver your mission. We started off in COVID. That could have been a disaster. We had to sign up our 90 partners to our financial commitments at a time when many were struggling. We had to recruit and build a team and make them feel effective to handle a very complex startup. We saw that as an opportunity because we could find more flexibility from government. We set up integrated systems online from day one. We didn't have any rent. We had high productivity home working that we established. We helped staff to set up home offices, provide financial support, and never exchanged a piece of paper up to date. So just finally, I think personal development is key to a great leader, as I mentioned. And when I realised that my leadership style, while being effective, actually, was at a personal toll to myself and my relationships, last 15 years, I've been very much focusing on personal development, done a lot of courses, and that had a transformative effect on me. It allowed me to lead with much less anxiety, much more relaxed and balanced and happier, which made me, I think, much more effective. And I learnt that I actually had quite strong skills dealing with people and working with people and helping them to achieve their best, which I'd largely neglected early in my career. And so I found by resolving my own personal challenges and pain that I found great pleasure and satisfaction in my work and personal life by getting much more richness and satisfaction from relationships. So that's pretty much it. I made a list of things that I thought would be good personal development things for leaders, but I don't think I've got time. So I'm happy to circulate that through KDM later.
Yeah, we can definitely share that. And I mean, we are kind of over time, but what I'd like to do is open, I didn't mention in terms of allow a few questions. What I should have said at the beginning is that people, if people use the chat to write the questions, and I can raise them at the end. But I do want to allow 1 or 2 questions, and while people are maybe thinking, or maybe I'll take the use of my position to ask you a question, if I may.
Sure.
And on strategy and uncertainty. So I think when you think about energy transition and COVID, probably the dominant factor is uncertainty. What's going to happen? How do I define a vision and a strategy when a lot of things are unknown? Or you can't be certain. You have one view, but then that could change. So from your experience, kind of, what can you say? What helped you deal in situations where you maybe had the dream, maybe had the vision, but connecting that or dealing with a changing environment? How do you kind of? What's your?
Yeah, my attitude to change has always been that I saw it as an opportunity. I love change, but I recognise that quite often people find change very threatening and create fear. So I think providing certainty and comfort for a team in the midst of rapid change is important, but to get them excited about the opportunity through uncertainty. All business is done in an uncertain environment, and I think that one of the great challenges for a business person is actually to identify where the world is going to be 5 years down the track, and have some contingencies if things don't work out exactly well, and keep tracking whether your what you imagine is still current. But I think having that intuition and vision of where the world is going, and keeping very closely connected to trends, and being able to be, I always try to build business by being 3 years or 5 years ahead. Sometimes it didn't work well for me. I think generally it has, but I'll give you an example. Is when I set up that online monitoring system for sustainability, I think I would have been a rich man had I started 10 years later, because being the first person with an online system doing sustainability monitoring, when large organizations saw it as being a nice to do but not a have to do, we are actually ahead of the market and ahead of where the economy finally went, probably 1 or 2 decades later. But I think having that view of where the world is likely to go is what makes successful businesses.
Cool. Thanks for that. That's important points. And we had Larissa who raised a hand to ask a question.
Hi, John. Thank you for that. As a researcher, I find that the leadership that I'm trying to develop and show is not leadership of the team I work with, but to inform and exert influence beyond my team in sectors beyond where I work. So specifically for me, the energy sector and the decisions it makes. So I'm sure you've got plenty of experience on that side of leadership. Is there some reflections on the type of leadership skills you use for that type of leadership?
Yeah, I think that's an area where I'm still learning. I've had the similar sort of challenges of and frustrations of dealing with particularly government regulators, and where you're very clear of what you think the solution should be, and just cannot get them to even look at what you think are solution sets even that would be more valuable. I think I'm really just learning in this space. I think collaboration and forming alliances is very critical. I think passion is important in any change role. I think being able to continually drive at a problem with unrelenting vigor, I think, is very important, and never give up. But I'm learning that forming really effective alliances is very key. Getting to the point of influence is very important. Forming friendships with people at key decision points can be crucial. But I think it's still an area that I'm really learning about how to influence people outside your influence zone. And it's been a real challenge for me, I think, particularly the last 2 decades. From when I was in the Australian Alliance for Energy Productivity and race, so it's probably the last decade particularly, found it very, very challenging having a Commonwealth government who was quite intransigent and not interested in what we were doing, and regulators that really, again, followed a track which I didn't even think was valuable to the economy. But I can't say I've got all the answers there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But clearly, keep going with the networking is part of what you're saying.
I think it's absolutely crucial, and I really only learned the value of this and how to do it effectively over the last 10 years. And I still think I'm not a great networker. I'm trying to improve, and I think it means that you need to put a lot more effort into networking with other organisations that may have a different set of objectives than you, but can help move things along. And you've got to be patient. These things don't happen overnight, unfortunately. Patience is not my strong suit.
Cool. Thanks for the question. And I think we could have had more questions. I'll pop up one, and let's see if we can make it short in terms of also the question is very specific. Because if there is one characteristics of an emerging leader to practice, and the most important one, what would that be?
I would give you a very different answer now than I would have at the beginning of my career. I think the first thing I do is make sure that you do some personal development work and know yourself, and understand your areas of fear, uncertainty, anxiety, because they're the things that are going to screw you up when you go forward. And if you don't understand yourself, what will happen is, if I look back on the really big business mistakes I've made, they've almost entirely been because of lack of self-knowledge and self-awareness. And I think that leads to everything else. I think that I would never have taken on investors that had different values than me if I had much more emotional intelligence, for example. So if I think back on the things that I really screwed up, they're almost entirely due to lack of personal development and emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anyway, that's the great segue to the workshop, and then I'll say, because that's the approach there, is on really the personal stuff. I think the first steps, as you say, what I take is the personal development. Kind of know yourself, develop yourself, and then be better at making decisions that align with what you want to do. So thank you very much, John, for coming on board, for sharing your insights. Looking forward to seeing you around in the sector. And now we'll move to Mika, all the way from Sweden, where with his workshop.